Jason, welcome back to the show, man.
Justin, honored to be back, man. 2023.
I know, right? It's been years. Like we're 2023 now. You were on the show in 2019. I don't bring too many people back on the show, but obviously the show is all about growth and obviously paying attention to what you've been doing, the growth that you've had in so many different areas of your life since we last spoke, not only from your own personal standpoint, but also from the standpoint of what you're teaching now. I was like, we have to have him back on. We need to dive into the idea that growth is infinite, right? We're never done growing. And so I want to dive into a lot of that stuff, but let's take a couple minutes and just reintroduce yourself to the audience that didn't hear your show a number of years ago.
Hey, what's up, guys? Retired Navy SEAL Jason Redman. I spent 21 years in the military and literally grew up in the SEAL teams. I was 17 in 1992 when I joined the Navy, and we were a peacetime military, but coming into the SEAL teams, and I just, learned all these amazing things, grew, flourished. Unfortunately, got a little like some of us when we start to find success at an early age, kind of got a big head, and but was still doing well. Became a leader, became an officer, and then I stumbled. My big head, ego, and arrogance got in the way, and I made a bad call on a mission in Afghanistan in 2005, and that really started a whole new journey of my life. I could have chosen to leave the military, and I had a lot of people who probably would have been perfectly okay with that. But I didn't. I decided to stay. And for several years, I grounded out to grow up and learn what it is to be a leader and build back trust, respect, credibility, all the things we need to be an effective leader, and built those things back up and came back with a vengeance and was crushing it, headed off to Iraq in 2007 with a whole new troop, and everything was good. Had my career back on track, and then I got on the wrong end of an enemy machine gun outside of Fallujah, Iraq in September of 2007. I was shot 8 times between my body and body armor, including a round in the face. And that started another whole new journey, a journey of figuring out how we deal with adversity. My operational career came to a grinding halt. I could have felt sorry for myself, but instead I said, no, that's not going to be me. I'm going to drive forward. Put that amazing sign on my door that basically said, hey, don't come into this room with pity. I will overcome. I will drive forward with positivity and action. And that sign took on a life of its own. And since that time, I finished my time in the military. I ended up retiring about 5 years later. They took care of me, and I got to finish and retire with 21 years. But from there, it has become my mission in this life to help people be better. I've run a nonprofit for almost 10 years, ran it to a $3 million organization, helped thousands of wounded warriors, decided to phase that down and transition to fully focusing on speaking and content. And we launched that in 2019. I think I was on Justin's show then, and then bam, COVID hit. But like many of us, we adapted. And I used that time to learn and grow. My book Overcome came out. We also wrote the Point Man Planner, and now we're on to the Point Man Planner version 2. And just continuing to grow, man. The journey of leadership never ends. I'm always learning, growing, and trying to figure things out, and trying to provide good content. What I do, I help people to take action in their lives. I help people to move past adversity. I help people move through sticking points, what I call the X, and I teach you how to be well-rounded and drive through that adversity to find success.
I love it, man. And it's so true. And you think about your storied career, and if people don't realize, and I'm sure most people do, like Navy SEALs are like, you guys are the top of the top. You guys are the most badass individuals in the military. And here you are at a young age leading a platoon. Do you feel, and I'm just curious, do you feel like at that time as a young man, I know at that time you felt you were ready, but do you think looking back, maybe I wasn't ready for that?
So I was ready. The interesting thing about leadership is leadership isn't rocket science. We as humans really complicate it. We bring in all baggage, and we bring in perceptions, and we bring in ego and arrogance, and our own ambition gets in the way frequently with leadership. But really, leadership is pretty simple. So I knew how to lead, and this is where most people are at. They know how to lead, but sometimes we ignore some of the basic principles for whatever reasons, because it's hard, because it's easier to say, hey, do as I say, not as I do. And a lot of people lead that way. And I was doing that as a young leader. So it wasn't that I wasn't ready. It was that I was immature.
Yeah.
And I needed to grow up. And usually either leaders definitely are not born. Leaders are made. Leaders are made through experience, through education, through adversity. These are all the things that make leaders. And which is an interesting thing, because we have a running trend of younger Americans right now who want to be leaders, like right off the bat. Hey, I just graduated college. I want to be a leader. And it's not that you may not have leadership abilities. You just don't have the experience level yet. Not that you can't get there quickly, but all of us need some time to figure things out. That is gained through experience. And the greatest experience you get is through failure and hardship. And I didn't have all those things yet. I didn't have all those things yet. Not that you can't be a great leader without them, but oftentimes it's through that journey, the highs, the lows, the failures, and the successes combined over time that build people into great leaders. And that's where I was at. So it wasn't that I wasn't prepared. It was that I was just kind of immature and choosing not to follow those simple rules.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's interesting. You mentioned kids coming out of high school, college going, I want to be a leader, right? And as we look at the world now, there's a generation of individuals coming up, and I don't want to say all of them. I believe there's really good households raising kids in a certain way, and they're driven and motivated. But we live in a world now where it's instantaneous, right? You press a button, it's yours. Like everything is at your fingertips. And so when it gets to a point of having to face adversity, we're seeing a lot of issues in individuals, being able to fight through. So they quit, they give up, they tap out, they go to the next job, they go to the next whatever. What are some things individuals can do to realize that, hey, in the moment, this adversity is a gift? Like when you were laying in that hospital bed after, being shot 8 times, you realized, hey, this adversity is a gift and I'm going to push through. Most people tap out. What's the difference? Like what can people do to really figure that out?
Yeah, developing an overcome mindset. I mean, that's everything that I speak on. And what is an overcome mindset? It's a mindset. It doesn't matter the adversity that you come across in your life. So many people see adversity as this negative thing. Oh my God, this problem's happening to me. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it is really negative. I mean, the loss of my best friend a few weeks ago was really hard. It was very negative. The impact on his family, the impact on his kids, the impact on the community. But an overcome mindset also looks at adversity as something that can shape us. It is an opportunity for us to get better. Leaders are forged during hard times. We don't make leaders in easy times. So if you can, an overcome mindset would say, well, this sucks. I don't really want to go through this. But if I embrace it, if I drive through it, if I navigate my way through these problems, I'm going to become better. And the greatest thing that I've found is when we go through these things, they're actually they're stepping stones on your experience as both a leader, as a team builder, organization, entrepreneurially, whatever it is you want to look at. You will be able to look back on all those things and they tee you up for greater success. My failure as a young leader in that hard multi-year road I had to walk down set me up for tremendous success when I got wounded. When I got wounded, it would have been easy to sit back and say, well, this isn't fair. I just, I got wounded or whatever it is, But instead, I look back on it and said, hey, man, you've been through worse. You've been through SEAL training. You've been through Ranger School. You've had hard times. You failed as a leader and you had to build yourself back up. So guess what? This is no different. The problems may change. The formula is the same. We gain awareness of what the problem is. We prepare for how we're going to deal with it. And then we take action. Those are the 3 components of an overcome mindset: awareness, preparation, action.
Yeah. And that's so huge. You talk about that failure that you had as a leader, right? I think sometimes when we are leaders and we tend to fail, we then question ourselves. We question how our team, or in your case, your platoon, looks at you or thinks of you or judges you or whatever. How can you begin to rebuild that trust in these individuals that you're leading, including family, including friends?
So some of it is you've just got to, all of us are going to have doubts when we fail. I speak a lot about failure and how you overcome it. So number one, we all have that little demon in our mind that tells us you're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're a terrible leader. You made these mistakes. Everyone has that. Michael Jordan had that little voice in his head. The difference between people who are super successful and those who are not, the people who are not give in and listen to that voice. And then they're not willing to try. The people who are super successful hear that voice, but they still drive forward. And that's what you got to learn to do, because especially coming out of failure, I don't know what it is, the flaw we have as humans, but boy, we love seeing people fail. Like it makes, I'm amazed at how quickly negative stories proliferate the internet and positive stories are out there, but they're just not on the same level. People quickly want to throw someone who is successful under the bus because they failed or they did something wrong or whatever it is. So when we fail, you're facing this uphill battle. But so what? So what? It is a choice. Greatest gift you have in this life, part of the overcome mindset, is you have a choice. No one forces you to lay there and feel sorry for yourself because you failed or because something went wrong. Now, understand that you may not be able to totally fix whatever problem there was. Like perhaps your marriage has failed. You may not be able to bring that relationship back together. You know, perhaps you failed at work and you were fired. You may not be able to get that job again. So in my TEDx talk, I talk about the end moments, but out of every the end moment, there's a new beginning. So out of failure always becomes a new beginning. You have to choose to navigate those waters to figure out what that new beginning is. When I failed as a leader, I hit rock bottom. In Afghanistan, I put a gun in my mouth and I was ready to take my life. That's how rock bottom I hit. And thank God I did not do that. One, I went and got some help. And the advice I got was exactly that. Hey, tomorrow, when you go back into this meeting, it could be the end of your career. They could take your trident and that'll be the end. He said, I bet that's not what's going to happen. He said, what's probably going to happen is they're going to keep you. But he said, that'll be an even bigger obstacle for you because now you're going to have to figure out how to build yourself back up as a leader in a community where your reputation, your professional credibility, your tactical abilities have all been placed into question. It's going to take a long time and a very hard uphill battle to rebuild yourself back. So that's what I had to do. So for anyone out there, coming back from failure is a choice. There will be lots of haters. They will always be there. Although I will say the haters will get smaller and smaller and smaller. You may always have some. The greatest advice I've given, and I'll close on this topic with this. I remember when I failed and I was at Ranger School and I was talking to one of our senior leaders and I told him, I said, I don't think I can do this. I was having doubts. I said, I don't think the guys will ever follow me again. I messed up too much. Our community doesn't tolerate failure very well. And he said to me, Red, he said, people will follow you if you give them a reason to. He said, that's it. That is the essence of leadership. He said, so you need to crush Ranger School and you need to come back to the SEAL teams and give these guys a reason to follow you. See, people will follow you. I don't care how bad you messed up. It's human nature. If someone is crushing it successfully, no matter how much you dislike that person, barring they're just a bad person, you're going to say, wow, I heard this person was a crappy person, or I heard this person fail, but you're going to watch them success after success after success after success after success. And sustained superior performance brings followers because people want to touch that magic too. So all you got to do is get laser focused on leading yourself. And that's what I focused on. And I was able to build myself back. That's how you overcome failure and drive forward. You just choose one step at a time. You choose to ignore the doubts. You choose to ignore the naysayers.
Yeah, that's so powerful. You'd mentioned earlier about how people love seeing other people fail. And it reminded me of this quote, and I don't know who said it, but it resonates in my head at times. And it is, since when has my success become your failure? Right? Like there's this weird comparison that we have going on in the world. And I think social media amplifies it to the umpteenth degree because everybody shares their highlight reel on social media and that's all the people see. They don't see the struggle. They don't see the hard times most of the time. So what can you say to somebody who is in that comparative mindset and for lack of a better term, victim mindset? of comparison, like what can they do to really begin to just focus on themselves and what they're doing next?
So this is probably the most insidious device we've ever created in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
It is a blessing. I oftentimes think it's much more of a curse. And what happens is people are OCD, and I didn't come up with this phrase, obsessive comparison disorder. And I'm guilty too, man. I don't know. It's how we're wired, but man, I pull this out and I'll be honest, I hate social media, but it is part of this life we have chosen.
It's a necessary evil, right?
That's right. And I try not to get sucked down into the rabbit hole when I'm on social media. I'm there for a reason. I want to use my platform to motivate and inspire, but I also want to look at others and promote my friends and stuff. But what happens? We all do it, Justin, all of us, all the way to the highest levels. We scroll through and we see, oh my God, Justin's doing this big event in March. Like, well, I'm not doing that event. Why am I not doing that event? And we start to get inside our head. And what you got to focus on is you. You know, every day you should be looking in the mirror. What are the things you're doing to move the needle in your business? It's not going to happen as fast as we like. My mentor is Bedros Keuilian. And man, Bedros and I talk every week, and I'm building my business. And sometimes I want to be at Bedros's level. You know, he's a 100 millionaire.
Yeah.
And he's like, bro, he's like, I have been an entrepreneur for my entire life. He's like, from the time I was 15. He said, you went off and became a Navy SEAL for 20 plus years. That was your focus. He said, I'm way ahead of you. He said, man, you're doing all the right things. Keep grinding. It'll grow. And that's what we got to remember as leaders and entrepreneurs. We're all, you're in a race per se, but it is a long race. It is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't burn yourself. Focus on every day we're making increases in different areas of our business, and ultimately you'll catch up. Stop comparing yourselves to other people. Don't look at them. I mean, we're all guilty, but put it to the side and say, look back at yourself and say, am I doing the things that I should be doing in my own business and in my own life with my own relationships? Most of the time, the answer is, you know what, I could be doing a little better.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know Bedros personally. He hasn't been on the show yet, but I know a number of people who are mentees of his, and I hear nothing but great things. And I remember, and I follow him on social, obviously. And so Amberly Lago is another person who's a mentee of his, and I'm speaking at her event in March, and she talks how amazing he is, right? And you see all the success, and you saw the financial success, and then all of a sudden he got ripped. I'm like, God, the next level of life. Like, he ended up losing all this weight and getting ripped. And I even started doing the whole, like, damn, like, I'm not where he is financially, and I'm certainly not where he is, you know, physically. And so you really do compound. But the cool thing about what you do and what winners do and other people who are looking to grow is there's not a jealousy chip on the shoulder. It's, hey, teach me.
Yeah.
You ask the right questions, right? There's a humbleness to growth in a sense, right? And so that's something that I'm sure you've learned in your life, going through what you did in the SEALs and having the ego and then having to lose that ego. What was that journey like emotionally for you? Like, really reassessing who you are?
I mean, it was tough, and and I'm pretty thankful that today I hear a lot of people say, wow, that guy's so humble. I failed at a pretty high level, and my ego and arrogance were my downfall. And I recognize today that everything can be gone in the blink of an eye. So, you know, we're trying to build our business. We're trying to grow, but I also want to stay really humble. And life is a balancing act. Sometimes I may be too humble. Bedros gets on me that I need to sometimes promote myself more, you know, a little more chest beating every now and then. But I do think there is a balance in everything we do. And unfortunately, some people get too full of themselves. Some people like that, but I think that's a smaller majority. I think that's a smaller minority than the majority of society who like seeing successful people who still can be down to earth and recognize, hey, I can mess up. I can still mess up. I still mess up, man. I can't tell you. I think like many of us during the pandemic, man, I was scrambling to figure things out and just throwing stuff at the wall and like, yeah, that didn't work. Yeah. So we had to reverse and go in a different direction. So at the end of the day, I just try and keep myself humble and remind myself that, A, I'm human. B, I will still mess up and make mistakes. But C, I will learn from them and drive forward and then hopefully share with other people. And that's what I'm trying to do. I recognize everything can be gone in the blink of an eye. I've been poor. I'll be poor again if I have to be. I'm going to try not to be. I'm trying to put everything in place to build, a legacy for myself and my family and build some generational wealth. But if it happens, then it happens because I'm making it happen. And if it doesn't happen, then I probably could have done some things better.
Yeah, dude, I love it. And so, we've talked about COVID and how much it's shifted the world. You talk often and teach people about leadership and how to lead and how to do it properly, not only leading others, but leading yourself. I don't care what side of the spectrum you are about COVID and everything that came after it. The reality is, I think we can all agree on leadership failed during this process. So I'm going to put you on the hot seat. What do you think could have been done differently from leadership in leading something that became such a great divide?
I think COVID became so political, and both political parties decided to plant their flags on the extreme sides. And I am a firm believer in a free market economy on all sides. I think that the choices should have gone down to the individuals. I mean, if you decided you didn't want to get the vaccine and then you got COVID and died, well, guess what? Hey, man, personal responsibility, individual freedom. The flip side of that coin, if you decide to keep your business open, as many people I know would have liked to have done, especially in the restaurant industry and the fitness industries, event industries, and I get events become a little different, bringing a whole bunch of people together. But still, at the end of the day, it should have been up to the individual, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the government could have put whatever safeguards in place, but trying to impose their will on the individual, I disagree with it. I know not everybody agrees with that, but I am a firm believer in freedom. I am a firm believer in a free market economy. And I think those are the things that ultimately went out. I mean, you look at Florida. Florida, obviously, Ron DeSantis really, I think there were some of the loosest regulations in the entire country, and Florida's economy continued to thrive, and their infection rates weren't at some astronomical level above any other state. They were actually, and I don't remember the exact numbers, so don't go on here and like quote. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I feel like they were nothing. I know for a fact that they weren't off the charts unlike any other place in the country.
Yeah. And I think at some point, so I'm in Pennsylvania, and we had pretty strict regulations depending on where you were in the state. Like, it just kind of came down to counties. And our numbers were like the same as Florida's, they were wide open, right? Like, and I had during that time got invited to speak at a couple smaller events, in Florida. And I'm like, whoa, like the world is opened up. It was like this weird like moment for me. Cause as somebody like you who hosts events, who speaks, who does all these things, you're like, whoa, okay, there is an opportunity here. What does that look like? And I think in entrepreneurship and leadership, you're always looking for that next opportunity. And so I'm intrigued to hear from you during this time when everything did shift. How were you looking at different opportunities in your life as a guy who made a majority of your living through speaking, I imagine?
All my income. Well, here's the funny thing. I was speaking part-time from, I retired from the military in 2013, and I was speaking part-time because I was still running my nonprofit up until 2018. In 2018, we made the decision to phase down our nonprofit, and I went full-time into speaking in 2019 and quadrupled our income going from part-time to full-time.
Wow.
And then only speaking. That's all I was doing was speaking. Overnight, COVID happened in March of 2020, and revenue gone. I remember like June, our accountant was like, hey, every event we had for the end of the year was gone, erased off the books. We saw a 96% reduction in revenue. The only thing that enabled me to not lose our house was my retirement pay from the military. Thank God my wife and I lived within our means, and thankfully, we were able to cover down. I mean, ramen noodles, you know, hey kids, ramen again. But so really, but COVID was a great thing. Through adversity comes opportunity, which led me to say, well, maybe I should get into coaching. So I started dabbling in coaching in 2020. And I didn't really know a lot about it. I basically reached out to certain friends who were coaching, but the problem was Bedros was one of those friends, and Bedros is coaching at this level, and here I was down at this level, coming out of the gates, learning. So it was really a lot of trial and error. And we've now learned a lot. So coaching, I got into workshops, we set up things so we could do virtual. So I just look at what were some of the things that we can do in our business to continue to bring in revenue, and to grow as a business. And it's been, probably mid 2020. We're now in the beginning of 2023. I'd say it was the middle of 2022 where we really started to figure things out. And now we're implementing what we figured out in 2023 with our new coaching programs and the mastermind that I'll be launching later this year. But it took me a couple of years to figure those things out.
Yeah, man. And I love that you share that, because a lot of times people come on a podcast or, again, that whole comparison thing. So they feel like they only need to share the shiny object, right? Like, oh, everything's blowing up. I got all these things happening in 2023. But the realistic thing is, in entrepreneurship and everything else that comes with it, especially our type of world, like speaking, coaching, those types of things, there is a massive learning curve. And the one thing that I experienced with every business that I launched was success in the beginning, and then failure, going, oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. And then it's slowly building back up because you figure out the processes, you figure out the things that you need to do to set the things right and in place, right? And that's kind of, you just gave a realistic time frame. And I want people to hear that, because not many people share that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and in business, I hear this all the time: speed of implementation. And even the big theme behind all my coaching now is action. Because I had this epiphany moment last year where I was like, man, you know what the difference is between people who are successful and those who aren't? It's action. That's it. People who aren't successful, they have hopes and dreams and wishes and wants, but they don't make a plan and take systematic action on that plan. Speed of implementation in business is a big thing we all hear. Oh, speed of implementation. But what you don't realize is speed of implementation sometimes takes years, even if you're doing it, even if you're really banging every single wicket all along the way. And yeah, I wanted our coaching business to be a 7-figure business out of the gates, and it was not. And the reason was because there were so many things we didn't know. We didn't know how to market it. We didn't have the right systems in place. We didn't have the right team. All these different things that now we're starting to figure out. We're getting on board. So it takes time. You don't make a Navy SEAL overnight. It takes years to build someone into a Navy SEAL. And I'll be honest, if you look at a SEAL who then goes on to our highest tier SEAL team, that's really almost a 6 to 8 year process. We estimate There's almost $10 million that goes into a SEAL that operates at the highest level. So think about how many failures and hardship and adversity came along that path before that guy got there. And entrepreneurship is no different.
Whew. That's crazy. 8 years to get from Navy SEAL to the top level of Navy SEAL. I didn't even realize that was a thing, to be honest with you. And so that time frame is mind blowing. But then only people see is like, oh, well, they, look at them, they've made it, right? People only see the victory, which is crazy. Now, obviously, you're talking about these things. I usually wait till the end to do it, but since it's being brought up, talk a little bit about what you're offering. I mean, you were telling me before I record, but you have something coming up in April, and I was intrigued by everything that you're bringing to the table. Let's talk a little bit about this processes that you came out for 2023.
Well, yeah, everything that I speak on are things that I've learned, guys. I mean, it ain't stuff I read in a book. There's systems I put in place for my own life. Everything in Overcome, everything in the Trident, and my new Point Man Planner, it is built on systems. This life is about systems. You want to be successful. Everything about leadership comes down to rule number one of leadership, which is leading yourself. And how do we lead ourselves? Well, it is identifying goals. It is getting a plan in place to execute those goals. It is having the discipline and putting the structure in place. And then it's taking systematic action over and over and over again that we move the needle every single day down the road to accomplish our goals. So all of these things are in place. It's why I built my Point Man Planner, because it was all the systems that I was using in my own life. And one of the things that I started to notice is in my Point Man Planner and the book Overcome, I talked about 3 areas. Back then I called it the rule of 3 Ps. And the rule of 3 Ps was every single day you should be doing one thing personal, one thing professional, and one thing physical. And if you do that every single day, you will be amazed at the level of success you have in your life. But coming into 2022, I started to realize that I was starting to do 2 additional things. One of the things I had always done because it came out of my SEAL career and I just took it for granted. And the other thing was starting to develop because I was an entrepreneur. So I grew 2 additional Ps. So the rule of 3 Ps has now become the rule of Ps. And those 2 additional things are profit. I wish someone had sat me down when I was younger and said, Jay, this world runs on money. You're going to get paid money. You should take a little bit of this money and put it to work so it sets you up for success in the long run. And I was like, you know what, man? This extra money I have, I'm going to pour into this alcohol and I'm going to pour that down my throat. And I drank away all my money when I was young. Now I'm older and I'm like, God dang. What an idiot I was. So now I'm trying to teach my kids. But what does that come down to? It comes down to profit. How do you put your money to work? And that's such a critical thing. And I talk to my kids about it. And I meet some people who are like, well, I'm not rich. Only rich people think about profit. That's bullshit. You can make profit off $1 if you're smart about it. If you make 10 cents off that $1, that's profit. And that 10 cents will compound over time. If you do that early enough in your life, that will grow to tens of hundreds to thousands to hundreds of thousands to even millions of dollars. So it's a mindset of profit every day. And then the last one is protection. And this came about from my SEAL career. I naturally thought about it because it was just part of what I did. But I came to realize 2 things. Number one, the world we're living in is getting more and more dangerous. The days of getting into a verbal argument with somebody and it just ending with a verbal argument are gone. I assume every single person I meet may think about shooting me because that is the crazy world we're living in. So many arguments are turning into where either A, someone pulls a gun on you in that moment, or B, they leave that argument and go get a gun and come back and shoot you or shoot your family.
Yeah,
that's
wild
and scary. But most people don't think about it. Most people live in this blind state that, oh my God, I saw this shooting that happened or this carjacking or this rape or whatever it was, and that'll never happen to me. This home invasion, that'll never happen to me. And I started thinking about that. I said, you know what, man, that is not the case. It happened. That somebody can be you, whoever you're watching. So it led us to create a protection workshop designed for the average everyday American. And it's called the Overcome and Survive Workshop. Things that I took for granted that I do in my own life that I really think every American should do also. Every American should own a firearm. And there's going to be a lot of people who watch this who are like, oh my God, you should own a firearm. Our firearm is a tool, no different than a hammer, no different than a screwdriver, no different than a pair of pliers. You want the right tool for the job. And guess what? If somebody breaks into your house, the right tool for the job in that moment is a firearm to protect yourself and your family. If someone breaks into your house, they have ill intent and you want to be able to protect yourself. But how do you do that? Well, you need to be educated on a firearm. You need to understand how it works. You need to be thinking about backstops. You need to be thinking about if my gun jammed, what do I do with it? God forbid I, shot my entire magazine. Now, how do I do a magazine check so that I can still engage these people who are trying to get in and come after my family? So we're teaching that. I'm working with a high-level martial arts master, Sifu Alan Baker, who is not only an expert in personal protection across the country, he is phenomenal at teaching people how to de-escalate situations, which is something a lot of people don't focus on. Everybody wants to be John Wick, but I got bad news. I can't teach you to be John Wick in a year, 3 years. I'm not John Wick. I'll tell you that right now. The best way you can avoid a danger or you can survive a dangerous encounter is to avoid it altogether. And one of the ways we can do that is learning how to use verbal judo to de-escalate a potential violent encounter. And Alan's teaching things like that in our course. We're teaching basic survival. If a storm blows in and kills all your power, what things do you have in place to take care of yourself? All the way, if we went to, I mean, look at what happened in Ukraine last year. The Russian forces were surrounded the border of Ukraine for, I believe, almost 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I would have been gone probably in the first week with my family, so that we would not have been there when that occurred. Do you have a mindset of that? And do you have systems and things? So these are things that we're teaching within our course. We're also teaching first aid. If society collapses or there's a major storm, and maybe you're cutting a tree in the backyard that fell and you cut yourself with a chainsaw, do you think the paramedics are going to be able to get to your house in the middle of it? No. So if you don't know how to put on a tourniquet and save your own life, you may very well bleed out, or someone you love may very well bleed out. So these are the things we're teaching in our Overcome and Survive workshop. Check it out, overcomeandsurvive.com. And it's coming up April 27th through 28th. Limited slots. There's only 30 slots available because it's obviously it's hands-on, one-on-one, and we want you to walk away with really key skills.
And where is that in the United States?
It's in North Carolina. So we're running it in a little town called Moyock. It's a large training area that's got ranges and classrooms and all the things that we need to, and even its own lodging and food. So everything's included in the price. You have to pay to get there, and then everything else is included.
That's great. That's really, really cool. Now you mentioned, I'm just curious, we don't have to deep dive on this. Do you think we are headed in a direction that society is going to collapse? Because what most people think is, hey, this is America, it's not going to happen. You mentioned Ukraine. Well, we're not Ukraine. We're not right next to Russia. We're not these things. What are your thoughts? I mean, obviously anything's a possibility.
America needs course correction. I'll tell you that right now. I'm really fed up with politics, both sides of the aisle. Both sides are going further and further to extremes. Regardless, I just finished a book that's about history, and it's viewed not necessarily, it talks a lot about history throughout the world, but it talks about the different ages of history, and that a lot of our morals and viewpoints are driven by where we were in the world. So if you go back to the beginning when we were hunter-gatherers, a lot of the things that drove us were driven by, we were hunting, lifespans were very short. So then we got into the agricultural age where everybody was farmers. That changed the moral state of the world, and specifically Europe and America. And then we got into the industrial age, and now we're in the information age, which is changing where we are again. But at the end of the day, if we are not careful, if we don't protect our freedoms, if we don't protect, in my opinion, the free market economy, a lot of people have this idea, well, we should just have equality across the nation. It doesn't, no society throughout the history of the world, as a matter of fact, every society throughout history has gotten to this same point. And the societies that got to that point eventually failed. So I hope that the average American will look back at history and will say, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe allowing exceptional people to drive forward and doing exceptional things. Not everybody. I'm no Jeff Bezos. I am no Elon Musk. I am no Steve Jobs. I will never be able to scale something to that ability. I'm not wired that way. Yeah. I'm good at what I do. And I think in this life, we all need to figure out what we're good at and then crush that. But we need to encourage that throughout society. And it shouldn't be based on race, creed, color, gender, or anything like that. I mean, it should go down to what Martin Luther King said. I have a dream that someday people will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character and what they provide to society. And we need to get back to that, because if we don't, my fear is, coming full circle, that yes, someday society will collapse. And I pray, I just pray it doesn't happen, man. But my fear is it could, and it may not happen in my lifetime, but I will teach my kids how to be prepared, hopefully, that if it does, that they can take care of themselves and their grandkids. So
yeah. It's scary, man. There's actually, I'll send it to you after we get off the call, but Rogan just did an episode where a guy talks about like the forecast of the world. And I've listened to it when I do my morning walks. And I'm like, this is realistic. Like it's a realistic thing where we can end up in a place that's not so great. I'll send you the link. It's fascinating.
I'll tell you, a lot of people like to ask me, what's the most impactful book you've read recently? Probably the most impactful book I've read in the last 5 years, I read it last year, is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I don't know if you've ever read it. I highly encourage it. It is almost, she wrote that book in the late 40s. It is disturbing. Everything she talks about in that book is happening in American society today. And it is about the downfall of society based on we should make everybody equal.
Wow, I'm definitely going to be checking that book out, because this whole I didn't expect us to have this conversation today. Like, but these conversations fascinate me when people have a true knowledge of what's going on in the world, right? And you've seen so much from your background to today, and being well read. I mean, to see that is really, really fascinating. I want to shift gears really quick, because you do talk about action a lot. You talk about getting off the X, right? And so when I speak at events, one of the things I talk about is overcoming limiting beliefs. And I have a 3-step process in order to do that. And the first part is to get uncomfortable, right? So if you're afraid to speak or you're whatever, right, then go speak. You have to change the vibration of your body and your system. Second part is surround yourself with the right people, right? Who are those people that are supporting you through this uncomfortable process? And the third thing is take action, because nothing works unless you do. And so when we look at that, right?
My favorite, action.
That's all that matters. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. You can get a little scared and you can have the right people, but if you're not doing the work, then who cares about the first 2 steps, right? But that's your first step, right? Get off the X. Where did that come from for you?
So get off the X is a military term used frequently in special operations, and I think in other military units also. But the idea is the X is the point of attack, point of incident. I mean, I spent my career trying to place the enemy on the X. We have a acronym in the military, or a phrase in the military: find, fix, and finish. In order to finish the enemy, we have to place them on the X. The flip side of that coin is if you find yourself on the X, if you're attacked, sniper attack, IED, ambush. I got the personal the personal experience of knowing what it's like to be on a very intense X. I mean, my teammate DJ Shipley, who went on to serve at the highest levels of the SEAL team, saw a lot of combat, said that our firefight that I was wounded in was the most intense gunfight he was ever in. So all of it, but what I have come to find from that experience and how I translated that into overcome was that everybody gets ambushed in life. It may not be the bullets and bombs of battle, but it's the bullets and bombs of life. And so many of us get stuck on that X. We get stuck in our minds. We get stuck in a moment in time. We get stuck because we lost someone or we lost our job, or, but you have to get off the X. And it is such a powerful phrase, and it's such a powerful mindset. It has to be built. And you have to be using it all the time to understand that when I encounter adversity, when I encounter hard times, when I encounter that little voice in my mind that says you're not good enough, you got to get off the X. And the X is just about driving forward and not allowing yourself to be stuck. The self-limiting beliefs, as you talk about, Justin, so many people get stuck on the X because of that. So I am super excited, actually, speaking of all of that here shortly, actually, by the time this probably comes out, it'll be live. But I am launching new online courses. And one of those courses is called the Point Man for Life program. And it comes with this Point Man planner. But it is all about how to build structures and systems and discipline to lead yourself to success, basically to become a point man for your life. A point man in the military was an individual that led us where we needed to go. But not only that, they evaluated, they looked to avoid ambushes, they looked to take the most efficient and the best route. I mean, there's so many multi-layers to having a good point man. Well, I teach you how to do that in your life. And our Point Man for Life online course comes live here in the next couple of weeks. By the time you watch this, it will be live. And I am super excited about it because it will teach you how to define a mission. Who are you? It's such a critical answer. It's such a critical question in this life. Who are you and what legacy are you going to leave behind? What is your mission in this life? And we lay that out. What are your long-term and short-term goals? I call that destination and course. How do we manage the risks? How do we evaluate the risks that are coming? And then the last and the biggest one is, how do we deal with the ambushes when they come? How do we get off the X? So the course teaches you all those different things. And I'm super excited to launch this.
Do you have a website for it yet?
Yeah, just go to jasonredman.com and you'll see courses, and they'll be able to go to it from there.
Awesome. We'll link all that stuff up in the show notes for sure. So I want to ask you a question that I ask every single person on the show. I don't know if I asked this in 2019, but now I ask every single person, and it's a two-part question. So the first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Okay. So number one, my definition of success is personal freedom. It is creating a lifestyle that you have put systems and processes in place, that you have made enough money, that you can do the things that you want to do. You're able to spend the time with the people that you want to have. You are satisfied with yourself. You look at yourself in the mirror. It doesn't mean you're exactly where you want to be. We all want to be better. I'm not where I want to be yet, but I am definitely a successful person. I have a great relationship. I have great kids. I have brought in some money. I have taken care of myself despite the adversity. That is success, in my opinion. What are the 3 things that I do to be successful every day? Part of that is my morning routine. My morning routine is critical to me. And that is, I get up, and as a leader, it's really important for you to have time to think. Whether you're the leader of an organization, the leader of a family, the leader of a company, the leader of a team, we need time to think. And usually once you get into the day, man, you're just barraged with all this information and people that need things and every fire that comes up. So the morning is my time to organize my thoughts. I get my protein, coffee, I start the day, and then I read. That's number one. I read. Usually I'm reading multiple books at once. I recently found these something called Blinkist, and it's a condensed version of books, so it's pretty cool. I can read an entire book in about 30 minutes. It gives me a summary, and then I decide, wow, I really like this book. I want to read the whole thing. So I read that, and then I start looking at my day. I start looking at my day and I think about that. Then I go get my workout in. That's non-negotiable. And then I get to the office and start my day. So those 3 things: proper nutrition, getting things going, getting some protein, reading and organizing my day, and then getting that workout in.
I love it, man. So obviously we talked about where people can go to sign up for your event that's coming up in April. We talked about your courses, but where else can people find you, hang out with you? What's all the good stuff online?
So if you go to jasonredman.com, you can find all the social stuff. I've challenged myself to do more lives on Instagram. I have not been doing as good at that. So that is one of my goals. I do Monday Muster every week. I put Monday Muster out. That's on my YouTube channel. And it's basically a motivational, about 10-minute video just on things related to leadership and overcoming adversity and balance in this life. And all those things you can find from my website.
Perfect, man. I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question. I didn't go back and listen to your answer to this. And this has been a question since day one of the podcast. So I definitely asked you this. So I'm curious if it's changed. But in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My failure as a leader. Everything was built on that. And oftentimes I think a lot about it. Like, what if I hadn't failed? What if I had not made that mistake in Afghanistan? Would I have gotten someone killed later? That my ego and arrogance would have led me down a path where someday I would have made such a bad call that somebody died because of my leadership and my tactical decision making. So I'm so thankful. It's the hardest journey I've ever walked, but it also was the greatest period of growth in my entire life, and I'm still learning from it. I mean, I look back on it now, and I'm still building content out of the things that I learned during that multi-year period of growing up and becoming a better leader.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jason, thank you so much, man, for taking the time out of your day to come back on the show, obviously. And then more importantly, teaching the world how to lead themselves so this world can be a better place. So we don't end up in the place that we were just talking about 15 minutes ago, man. But I appreciate you.
Yeah, Justin, thank you, man. Yeah, likewise. I think, I think at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing across this planet. I've seen it. Like, whether you're in Iraq or Afghanistan or Colombia, or Russia, Ukraine, China, like the average person just wants to find a level of success, like we talked about. And I truly think we can do that if we just give people the freedom to do it, stop forcing them. Just allow them to get out and live and execute and try and be the best version of yourself. Figure out what you're good at, figure out who you are, and then execute on that. We're becoming the gig economy. It's amazing. I mean, if you have a special skill or talent, this is one of the great gifts this gives us. It's an insidious device, but if you have a special skill or talent, you can capitalize on it with this device. You can start a business within less. Really, if you really know what you're doing and you organize everything, you could probably launch a business in 24 hours on this right here.
Oh, yeah. It's so true, man. Thank you so much again, dude. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have you back on the show again in the future, and excited to see where your life goes in 2023.
Justin, thanks, man. Appreciate it.